It took me over 3 months to get my first 100 sales on Etsy. But since then, I've managed to generate over $1 million in revenue in less than 3 years selling on Etsy as a print-on-demand seller from Sweden. So in today's video, I'll go over how to actually get your first 100 sales in 2025. So the first thing that I really want to emphasize is that you should not throw spaghetti at the wall. So when I started, I did about 500 listings a month, which I know is a lot, but I was putting my everything into it and I was doing it the full day. So what 500 listings a month meant was maybe like 30 to 50 listings a day. Some days you do it, some days you have to do more, some days you do less, but depending on the day. And the crazy part about that, I thought that like more effort equals more results, which was not actually the case. So there's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio that's really impacted me. And the biggest takeaway that I have from the book is that he said, pain plus reflection equals progress. So what I did in the beginning was just the pain. I only went and just listed. I never reflected on it. So I just made a bunch of designs based on some shallow research. And none of them really worked. So like one worked here and there. Just throwing spaghetti at the wall just made me spend so much time and so much money on listing fees as well. But just so much time on things that just didn't work. So what I should have done there is just reflected on it. So one of the main things is that when you're putting like your reps in and doing all of the work required to get to where you want, it's so important to always take a step back after a while and just reflect on it. Like, what's not working well? You've done a lot of reps now. What's not working? What's working well? What can we do better here? Because that reflection and then taking action on it again with these new reflections will make you be able to have progress. In the beginning, it's so really easy to get overwhelmed with like how fancy some designs look, but in all the honesty, simple sells. So like doing the most simple text-based designs is what I've always done myself. You don't have to overcomplicate stuff because simple always has sold the best. And I've also noticed throughout the journey that the easier you can convey something through a simple thumbnail or like a simple listing, the more people will actually be able to understand it, or at least understand the thing that you want to show off. So if you make this really intricate design on Etsy and you only have the main thumbnail and a couple images, they can absolutely see the design. But if it's hard to even search for the whole thing, people won't even find it because it's so intricate. So it's always easy to just focus on what actually works, make something better, and then just simplify the whole thing. Not making any like super intricate designs, just making simple text-based designs and taking what works here and combining them in new ways to create something new. And by that, you're adding value to the platform and are setting yourself up for great success. And one of the main things too that I can now see in retrospect is that you really need 3 things. When I started, it was mainly like the mockup and the size charts. That was the thing that you needed, at least to start off. That was the general consensus. But what I'd say now in late 2024 and early 2025, you need a mockup, a size chart, and a guarantee. So a guarantee is just something that can say that if anything happens for like 7 to 14 days or longer than that if you want, the customer can get either a refund or replacement if they're unhappy with the purchase. Something like that, when you have no reviews, it offsets a lot of the risk from the customer and puts it back on us, the sellers. So it really helps a lot with just getting some traction in the beginning. Because if you see a store that has like 0 reviews, the likelihood that they will actually put money into that store and get what they actually purchase, it feels really low. Compare that to another store that has like thousands of reviews, the likelihood that they will actually get what they purchase if they purchase from that store is really high, which makes them more likely to purchase from that. And a guarantee is something that can alleviate a bit of that nerve from the customer's end and put it back on us, the sellers. So those 3 things, a mockup, a size chart, and a guarantee is what you need now in order to just get going on Etsy overall. There's more things that you can do to optimize the listing, but it's so easy to just, like in the beginning with just these first 100 sales, to just feel overwhelmed with the whole thing. So 3 images. The main thumbnail, which should be a proven mockup. The second thing to that is having a guarantee, and then a size chart. The main important thing to know at these beginning stages is that the design is king. If we think of the whole thing here with Alex Hormozi's value equation, this part here, the dream outcome, is the most important part. You can optimize anything you want here, but you can't polish a third. So if the design isn't there and people don't want the design that you have on the specific item you're selling, then you won't ever get sales, because the design is the most important part. Like, they have to want the thing that you're actually like designing. which is why it's so important to just base everything out of research and just taking stuff that was on the platform, like seeing that this element works here, like this type of design works here, this type of design works here. Let's combine the elements from these designs and create something new and add that on top of the platform. That's why it's so important to just base everything out of that, because if no one wants the design, you won't get sales. So the design is the most important part about the whole thing, which also always results in that you have to test some more to find the actual like design that works for you. I did so many listings in the beginning and so many different designs. I mean, literally thousands of them. And the Pareto principle, which is basically the 80-20 rule. So 20% of your efforts generate 80% of your results, which basically just means that if you have like 100 designs made that, for instance, so basically 20 designs could sell some. But what I've actually noticed in my experience is that 20% of those 20% is actually the ones that will carry your whole store. There's just a small number of designs, a small number of listings that will just carry the whole thing, which is why it's so important to just test as many as possible in the beginning to just find the winning like designs. It takes a long time, like it can take years. I don't want to say that to discourage you, but I want to say that like you have to put in a minimum like a year to actually see something work. I knew nothing about design when I started, and to just expect that I will get something like the month after that is just outrageous, even with the amount of work that I put in. Because my main goal in the beginning was to make like 5K a month in net profit, because that was the capital that I thought that I needed to actually make my music project work. It took a lot longer than I thought because I just was naive about the whole process and I couldn't really see the whole thing clearly. But now in retrospect, I can definitely see that just researching design and putting stuff together in new ways to create something new to the platform is the way to go, and it's the most important part about the whole thing. I can't emphasize that enough. But second to that, when you actually have something that actually works, it's so important to double down. It's so easy to just test, like if you test some listings here and there. If I had even less than 100 sales, I had less than 10 sales. If I have a design that sells like around 3 times, that's what I would call a best selling designs at this specific stage, because you made something so great that 3 people people want it so bad that they will even buy from a store that has no reviews, which is really, really unlikely. So you made something great if you're at this stage. Then I would just focus everything on that design, like scale that out to different niches. If you're in some specific niches, like let's say that you're in the nurse niche, for instance, then I would just take the design and just scale that out to every single like sub niche within nurses, so every type of nurse there is, just to make sure I cover the whole ground with nurses, and then just take that design and apply it to different niches itself. It's just so important to, when you find a listing that sells some in these beginning stages, like if you sold 10 different things and just 3 of those came from the same listing and the same type of design, then just double down on it, because if you think of this in percentages, like mainly 30% of your whole revenue at this beginning stages comes from this specific design. So just doubling down on that thing that gave you some traction in the beginning, but scaling that out to different niches is so important. And then once you scale it out, you can just flip it around a little bit, add something new to the same niche itself. So let's say that you have, for instance, are in the basketball niche, and you have like a funny saying here and like a basketball here. Then maybe you can just change like the funny saying to something else, or you could just switch it around. You can maybe have like the basketball up here and then the funny saying underneath. There's so many things that you can do just to flip the design around to add more value to the specific niche you're in, but just stick into the design style that you have found success in. But yeah, as I mentioned, the biggest hurdle is always going to be the design in the beginning, as it's the most important part of the whole process. Because if no one like really wants the design, you can optimize however you want, but if they don't want the design, they won't buy it. So if you want to learn more about design, then I highly suggest watching this video right here, as that goes through all the details about design and the whole process. I'll see you in the next one.